Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Aquarium Online Academy episode. My name is Sarah. I'm one of the educators here at the Aquarium of the Pacific in Long Beach, California, and I'm so excited to start exploring with you. Now, all you viewers out there, you are scientists today. I know you may not have woken up thinking that you're a scientist today, but by tuning in with us, you instantly become a scientist, which I think is amazing. And we're going to look at some really interesting animals today. Now, before we dive into the topic that we're going to explore, I do want to put up a number for you because we would love to hear from you. So I've got a big crew here in the studio with me. I've got Soraya and Cole and Jeanette, and they're helping control everything you see behind me, including this number right here. Now, as we're exploring, if you have an animal you want to talk about, if you have a question about the animals we're talking about, or if you have observations to share, go ahead and text us at 562 286 1838. This is our live text line. And so that's if you're watching with us live on January 16th at 3 p.m. Now, if you're watching after the fact, we're so glad that you found our video, and we'd love to hear from you, but we're going to ask that you email us at this email just below the phone number. It's live@lbaop.org. So you can use either of those methods to reach out, and we'd love to hear from you. All right, so what we're going to do today is we're going to be exploring adaptations. Excellent. Now, this is a big word, and if you've seen any of our programs before, you've probably heard us reference adaptations, or maybe in class or out in your community, you've heard someone say this word adaptation. But we're going to break it down and figure out what this word means, and then we're going to explore some animals and see if we can find their adaptations. So I want you to think for a moment. Have you ever heard that word? Go ahead and give a thumbs up if you've heard that word adaptation and you know what it means. Thumbs down if you're like, that's a brand new word for me. Or a thumb in the middle if you're like, maybe I've heard it, but I'm not really sure. Think about, have we heard that word adaptation? Now, maybe you've heard the word adapt before, which is similar and kind of along those same lines, but think about that word adaptation. Excellent. I see lots of varied answers out there. So the word adaptation, it means something on an animal's body that's going to help it survive in its habitat. Now, we've got a lot of other words we threw in there. So habitat being the home of an animal. So an adaptation is going to help an animal survive in its home. And when we say survive, I want you to think about what an animal needs to survive. Think about us. What do we need to survive? Because it's pretty similar for animals too. Things like food, right? We need food to survive. So an adaptation could help an animal find or catch its food. We need shelter. So an adaptation could help them find a place or build their home. We need protection. It kind of goes along with having a home too. So adaptations could be how an animal protects themselves. And then we need to find a mate and breed, right? That's how animals continue their species, is they have babies. And so sometimes adaptations could be finding a mate. So all of those things are important for an animal's survival, and adaptations help animals achieve those things. So every animal, even plants too, that you could think of, if you look around your home or your community or you come to the aquarium, all those animals you see, they all have at least one, but probably more adaptations. Now, we're going to pause on the ocean for a moment, and I just want you to picture in your brain, because we're going to make sure that we understand this concept. I want you to think about a giraffe. Go ahead, you can close your eyes and picture a giraffe in your brain. You got it? Now, think about, what do you think a giraffe's adaptations are? What is different about a giraffe from all other animals that maybe helps it do some things to survive in its habitat? What do you think? You're right, it's long neck. So giraffes have those really long necks, and that neck allows giraffes to eat at the top of the trees that no other animal could eat. They can't reach it. So the giraffe's adaptation, or one of their adaptations, is having a really long neck. All right, think about a monkey. What's special about a monkey that might help them survive? They have a tail, right? So they've got hands and they have feet they can use to climb, but they also have almost like a fifth limb. They have their tail they can use to climb. They also have thumbs, just like us. And that is actually an adaptation for monkeys and apes and us as well. So you may not have realized it. We have adaptations. And your thumb is an adaptation. It helps us do lots of things. And if we didn't have thumbs, we could probably still do things, but it'd be a lot more difficult. So our thumbs are an adaptation that we have. All right. I hope that kind of helps you get an idea of what an adaptation is. And now what we're going to do is I'm going to have Soraya picking out some different animals, and we're going to take a look at the animal. We're going to do some observations. So we're going to look at it and describe what we see, and see if we can find any adaptation animals as we explore. All right, Soraya, take it away. What's our first animal? Ah, excellent. All right. We'll put up our text line. So if you know this animal, if you have questions, if you have observations, so things that you notice that you want to share, or even if you have an idea of what their adaptation is, go ahead and text us at 562-286-1838. So this, I heard you all shout it out, is a fish. Absolutely. Now, this is a very special fish to us here in California because it's actually our California state marine fish. It is a protected fish. And we have them right here in what we call our ocean backyard, so in our kelp forest right here along the Southern California coast. This is called a Garibaldi. Now, what do you notice about this fish? Does anything stand out to you? Well, I notice, and maybe you notice too. You can give a thumbs up to the camera wherever you're watching if you notice this too. I noticed the color of this fish. Did you notice that? It's pretty shocking, right? This is a pretty brightly colored fish. So this fish, our Garibaldi, is this bright orange color. And even out in their natural habitat, they do stand out because they do have this bright orange color. Excellent. What else do you notice? It's got a mouth. It's got an eye. Kind of a bumpy head. What about right here? Did you notice this part of its body? Or here? Or even here? What part of the fish's body is that? That's right. Those are their fins. So fish have fins. And what I love about the Garibaldi is what shape do you notice at their tail? A heart. So Garibaldis all have that heart-shaped tail. So that's another way if you're like, I'm not sure if it's a Garibaldi, but you take a look at its tail, it's a heart shape, it's a good chance it's a Garibaldi. All right, so we've made some observations. Now, some of the things that we observed, I wonder if those could be adaptations that this animal uses to survive in their habitat. Now, Garibaldi live in a kelp forest habitat. So this is what their home looks like. And this is what it looks like out in the natural habitat too. So this is here at the aquarium. This is one of our exhibits. But kelp forests tend to be these sort of gray, brown, maybe green colors. Just like this. This is kelp out in the natural habitat. So there's not a ton of bright colors to see. But that Garibaldi definitely was a bright color. And you may have guessed it, but having that bright color is an adaptation. Now, a lot of times we see the color of an animal as an adaptation where it blends into its surrounding. But do you think the Garibaldi is going to be able to blend into this habitat? Probably not very well, right? If we even go back to what we call it Casino Point, one of our exhibits here, there's a Garibaldi down here. There are some other sort of orangey-ish fish, but it's definitely the brightest one down there. So it's not going to blend in. But think about, in nature, when an animal is a really bright color, what does it signal? Any ideas? So a lot of times when animals have a bright color, it's a warning sign to other animals that maybe they are poisonous or venomous. They have some toxins in their body. So that we see a lot in nature, like poison dart frogs, right? Those frogs are bright yellows and blues and reds, and that is a warning. Don't come near me because I could really hurt you. I've got toxins in my body. Now, the Garibaldi, I can tell you, doesn't have any toxins in its body. But it definitely uses its color as a warning. So an animal who sees a Garibaldi and thinks maybe that might make a good snack doesn't know that the Garibaldi isn't poisonous or venomous. It just sees its bright color, and that's a warning, and so they might stay away. Now, while the Garibaldi doesn't have any toxins in its body, they are known for being really tough fish, really territorial animals, which means they like their space, and they don't like anyone else in their space. They don't live in big schools like we see of some fish. They like to be in sort of cave areas, maybe with a partner, but that's about it. And they will chase away any animal, any fish, whether it's smaller or larger than them, including divers sometimes. They will chase them away or nip at them to keep them away from their space. And so that bright orange color is a warning to stay away. And so that is one of their adaptations. Now, as a fish, their adaptation too are their fins, right? Think about, what do the fins help the animals do? We've got some fish in here swimming around. So what do their fins help them do? Exactly, their fins help them swim. That might seem like all fish have fins. That's pretty basic, but that part of their body helps them survive in their habitat. And so fins are another adaptation of fish, including that Garibaldi. We've got some questions coming in. Excellent. Ooh, why do they have a big bump on their head? All right, let's go back to our Garibaldi. And then while we're looking at this, I am going to task Soraya to find a picture of a baby Garibaldi as well. But they have this big bump on their head, and you will notice once we see the baby that they don't have it as a baby. So when animals have big bumps on their head like this, it's called a sagittal crest. And basically what it is, it's a little bit more of muscle, like a tangle of muscles on their head and into their jaw, and it gives them a really strong jaw. So this animal has a pretty small mouth. I mean, it's not a tiny mouth, but it's not a huge mouth. They're going to be eating tiny little fish that they can find or crustaceans, but having that really strong jaw does give them that advantage to nip at animals who might come near them, especially if they're much larger than them. That strong bite can help protect them. So that's why they have the bump on their head. Now let's take a look at a baby Garibaldi. Oh my goodness. Sometimes it's kind of surprising to know that this fish turns into the other one as they grow up. But this is what a baby Garibaldi looks like. So there's a couple ways you will know that it's a juvenile or a baby. And one, you'll notice it doesn't have that big bump on its head. So this body or the shape of its body changes. Also, look at its tail. No heart-shaped tail. So their tail fin is going to change too. But the most obvious thing is, what do you notice on this baby that the adult didn't have? Yeah, that bright blue, the electric blue spots. Now that is even more of a warning because that's even brighter than the orange. It's also a signal to all the other animals around, I'm a baby. Because the adults look very different, but this baby has those spots. And so it's like, leave me alone. I'm little. I'm still growing. And then they grow up to being really tough and territorial, and then they're like, still leave me alone. Excellent. All right. So that is our Garibaldi. We learned about or discovered, explored some of their adaptations. Let's start with a new animal. Who's next? Excellent. A very different animal, but equally cool. What animal is this that we're looking at? Any guesses? That's right. We are looking at a sea turtle. Now, specifically, this is a green sea turtle. And in a moment, I'll tell you how we can tell it's a green sea turtle. But this is one of the types of sea turtles that we find in the ocean. Now, we don't have too many sea turtles that live here along our coast in Southern California, but every so often we do have some green sea turtles. So there are chances of seeing green sea turtles here along our coast. It's not very common, but it can happen. Now, the way that I find that this is a green sea turtle is if you look right behind their eye, they've got these sort of shapes right here. These are called scutes. And green sea turtles have these scutes right here behind their eye. They've got 4 to 5 of these scutes right behind their eye. And if we look at other sea turtles, they're not going to have that same pattern. So that's how we can tell a green sea turtle. Now you might think, oh, green sea turtle, their bodies are going to be green. But that's actually not how they get their name. They get their name green because they eat a lot of algae, a lot of greens in the ocean, and it turns the fat inside their body green. So sometimes green sea turtles look more kind of brownish gray. Like if you come visit us here at the aquarium, here's a video of a turtle swimming. But here at the aquarium, we have a green sea turtle. His name is Copper, and he's kind of a grayish brown color. But watching this sea turtle move, let's think about their adaptations. What do you think helps this animal survive in their habitat? Now, I'm thinking of 2 specific ones. Maybe you have other ideas. But one, I'm watching how this sea turtle moves. And even though they've got this big body, it looks like they're swimming pretty well in the water. Now, we said with the fish, they use their fins. What is the turtle using to swim? They kind of look like fins, but for a turtle, we're going to call them flippers. All right, everyone, you can take your arms out straight and kind of flap them like you're moving like a sea turtle with their flippers. Now, they're really long and they're powerful. There's a lot of muscle in there, and so that really helps push them through the water. Now, I won't say that they are the fastest swimming animal in the ocean, but they can scoot along with those fins. Now, they do have the fins at the back. These ones are going to help them steer. So these look more like paddles, as the front ones are going to help them cut through the water. And having those really long flippers help them push themselves through. So that's one adaptation they have. Now, what do you think protects their body? Here we've got a good video of a turtle coming to the surface to breathe. Now, another adaptation they have that protects their body. What do you think that is? That's right, their shell. Now, I've got a sea turtle shell. I'm going to bring it in front of the camera. Now, this is a different shell than a green sea turtle. A green sea turtle shell is actually going to be a lot larger than this one. And the way that I can tell it's different is because of these shapes right here along the side. This side is better. So right here, they've got these shapes. And green sea turtle's shell doesn't look like that. They all have different shapes to their shell. This one is from, I believe, a hawksbill sea turtle. So they have this sort of cut into their shell. But their shell is really hard. I'll knock on it. I don't know if you'll be able to hear that in the microphone. But it's really, really hard. And even when it's on their body, it is very hard. And it's part of their body. So unlike an animal like a hermit crab, which might use one shell and then move to another shell, sea turtle shells are connected to their body. It grows with them. I'll turn this around. And here is where their spine would be attached to the shell. And so that turtle carries the shell around with them everywhere they go. And as the turtle's body grows, their shell grows as well. And that shell, like I said, is really hard, and so it protects their body. There are very few animals who would be able to bite through the shell of the turtle to get to them. And so they don't have a lot of predators in the ocean because not very many animals can eat through that shell. And so that's their adaptation, is having this really hard shell. Excellent. All right, moving right along. Let's see what other animal we've got in store for us. Excellent. Now I bet that many of you out there watching, you recognize this animal. Now first we can say we know it's a fish, right? But let's think about what kind of fish it is. Have you seen one that looks like this before? There's a pretty popular movie that features a fish like this. So you might be familiar with that. But we call these, well, clownfish is one name for them. We also call them anemone fish. Now I wonder if you can figure out why we call them anemone fish. If you know anything about clownfish, that might help. They live in an animal called an anemone. And that's what this green and purple thing is here that kind of looks almost like fingers or noodles. This is a sea anemone. Here we go. This is another picture of a sea anemone. And this is an animal. We find anemones in all kinds of water. So clownfish or anemone fish are a tropical species, but anemones we can find all over. So if you live here in Southern California and you've been to the tide pools, you might have seen anemones. Or if you visit us here at the aquarium in our northern Pacific, so our cold water exhibits, we've got anemones here, 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 lots of them. You've touched an anemone before. If you touch their tentacles, it might feel kind of sticky. So anemones, they are relatives of jellies, of sea jellies. And the way they protect themselves, their adaptation, is that they can sting. So their tentacles have tiny little stinging cells in them. So that's an adaptation of the anemone. So if anything tries to eat it or maybe swim through it, they might get stung by the tentacles. Now back to our anemone fish. These animals, they do live in the anemone, which is interesting because we just said that the anemone's adaptation is to sting an animal who might try and swim through it. But we see these clownfish or anemone fish living in anemones. So that would mean that these anemone fish, they also have an adaptation that helps them live in the anemone. And we say a general anemone fish because they come in all different colors. So we've got pink anemone fish. We have like a light orange, pinkish anemone fish that doesn't have any stripes on its body. Instead, it has a stripe down its back. It's called a skunk anemone fish, which are one of my favorite. We have anemone fish that are all orange with one white stripe. We have them that are black and yellow, like this one. So they come in lots of different colors, not just that sort of traditional orange, white with black outlines that we're used to. But they all live in these anemones. Now, you might know, but let's think about what do you think an adaptation on their body might be that allows them to live in these anemones without getting stung? Because does this fish look, does it look unhappy? A lot of fish, I think, naturally look kind of grumpy, even if they're not grumpy fish. So this one may not look very happy, but it definitely doesn't look like it's getting stung or trying to swim away. It's kind of nestling in there, getting nice and snug in its anemone home. Does anyone know what an anemone has on their body that helps them to be safe in an anemone? It's kind of gross, a little bit, but it's slime. Think about like mucus, like when you sneeze and you got mucus coming out of your nose. Not the same as when you sneeze, but anemone fish, their body is covered in a thick layer of slime. Now, most fish in the ocean, their body is actually covered in slime, and that's a good thing. It protects their body. But the slime on the anemone fish is specialized and thicker, and so when they swim through this anemone, they don't feel the sting from those tentacles, and they're able to live inside an anemone. And then as a sort of thank you to the anemone, what this anemone fish is going to do is they're going to clean up the anemone. A lot of animals in the ocean, not the cleanest eaters, pretty messy. And so there's food particles all over, and including the anemone, kind of messy. And so the clownfish or the anemone fish will eat all those little food particles that get dropped and help keep the anemone clean. And they'll also keep other animals away so that the anemone stays extra safe. So that is just one adaptation that the anemone or the clownfish has. Now, if we're looking at the color on its body, do you think the color could be an adaptation? We talked about before with our Garibaldi, that bright orange color, and that was a warning, that was an adaptation. So that absolutely works for clownfish or anemone fish. But there's also a special pattern on the fish's body. Did you notice that pattern? I kind of mentioned it. They've got orange, too far, orange, white, orange, white, and then outlined in black. So there's these stripes to them, right? Do you see anything else that's kind of lines, squiggly, maybe moving, that they hide in? Now, the clownfish and the anemone are very different colors, but this pattern on the fish's body actually helps break up how other animals see them. So another animal, maybe another larger fish who's looking for a snack, maybe doesn't have the best eyesight and is looking for another fish to eat and sees something moving, but this clownfish that's moving through the anemone with their tentacles that are also kind of waving, kind of like the shape of these stripes. And that is going to make it much harder for that animal who's maybe trying to eat our anemone fish to find them. So the color pattern on their body can be an adaptation because it breaks up, it's disruptive. It breaks up the view of the animal, making it harder to find where the animal is, where it's moving, how to catch it. So that is another adaptation. So every animal we think of, there's so many adaptations we can find on our animals living in the ocean and on land. But let's keep going. What else can we find? Ooh, there's something really big. Oh, Soraya knows me so well. This happens to be one of my all-time favorite animals in the world, not just in the ocean. Does anyone know what this animal is? Oh, look at it, so beautiful. This is a whale shark. Now, the name also combines two of my favorite animals. I love talking about whales, love talking about sharks. But the whale shark specifically is a type of shark. It's actually the largest shark in the ocean. So let's think about what kind of adaptations they might have. Now, while you're thinking, I'll tell you a little bit about this video. So one thing we know is that this is a pregnant whale shark. You can tell she's pretty large, which is amazing because there's actually not a lot known about where whale sharks give birth. So this footage, we didn't get a chance to see them give birth, but we did see this pregnant whale shark. And this footage was taken by one of our volunteers here at the aquarium. So one of our volunteers in our education department, he goes on all these fabulous trips, sees all these amazing animals, and then he lends us his footage that we can use for our teaching tools. So someone we know actually took this video, which is amazing, which also means that you can go swimming with whale sharks. Now, I will say that I have had the pleasure or the privilege of being able to swim with whale sharks, but I did not get amazing footage like this. All right, so now that we've kind of thought a little bit, what do you think are some adaptations that this animal might have? Now, we've talked about color, right? So do you think the color or the pattern on this animal's body could be an adaptation? Let's think. And we just had a question come in, and it relates to what I just posed to you. So the question was, why does this animal have spots? So I want to turn it back to you and ask you, why do you think an animal who lives sometimes in the shallows, maybe it's kind of blue and kind of murky, maybe there's the sun shining in and it kind of creates these sort of like tricks of the eye, why do you think an animal might have spots? It's an adaptation. I bet that's what you were all thinking. It's an adaptation. So that pattern helps them to actually blend in. It kind of disrupts the same way that our anemone fish's pattern did. It disrupts the view of them. It also just makes them look beautiful. But it also disrupts their pattern. And a fun fact about their spots. So their spot pattern is actually unique to each whale shark, specifically behind their gills. So I'll point it out once the video goes through again. And scientists, oh, excellent. So like right around here, this spot pattern, scientists will photograph that when they can and use that as a database to try and identify different whale sharks. And that's a method of tracking them. So you can take a photograph if you're diving in one area, and then maybe you go back to that same area the next year and you see more whale sharks. You can take photographs again, and you can see if you can match it up. And that helps us track where those animals might move and learn more about them, which I think is really neat. It's kind of like a fingerprint. If you look at your fingers, your fingerprint are unique to just you. Unless you're an identical twin, no one else in the world has the exact fingerprints that you do. Whale sharks, their fingerprint is basically their spot pattern, which is pretty cool. Now, someone asked, what do they eat? Which is a great question. Let's look at their mouth. Pretty large mouth. Now, it is a shark. And oftentimes when we hear the word shark, what do we think about in their mouth? Giant teeth, exactly. Does this shark, I know it's kind of hard to see because we're kind of far away from its mouth, but does this shark look like it has giant teeth? Not really. Now I'm going to grab, I have a replica, so not a real one, but a replica jaw from a whale shark. All right. Now I have to kind of step back because it's really big. So I'm going to show you the full thing, and then I'll bring it closer. Ooh, it is not, our green screen does not love the whale shark jaw, so apologies for the little sparkliness, but this is our whale shark jaw. And now I'm going to bring it closer. Actually, I'm going to put it on my document camera. You're not going to be able to see the whole jaw, but I'll show you sort of where teeth might be. Give me a minute, bear with me as I maneuver this giant mouth. All right, so right here, let me adjust the lighting. Zoom in, there we go. Give me just a minute. I can do this. There we go. That's better. So right here, these are their teeth. Now what do you notice? There's a lot of them. All those little bumps, those are individual teeth. There's lots of rows, but they're really tiny. So unlike the sharks that we think about with these big giant teeth, they have really tiny teeth and they're not going to be chomping on food. So whale sharks are what we call filter feeders. So someone also asked, how big can they open their mouth? I'm going to have my team look up. I don't know the specific footage of how wide their mouths can open, but I can tell you this is pretty large. Now, I'm not the tallest person. I'm only about 5'2", but this mouth is like maybe almost half of me. So I would think a couple feet is how wide they can open their mouth. But that is what they're going to do to eat. And they're feeding on tiny things in the water. So plankton, things that are floating, shrimp, little krill, and little fish. And what the whale shark does is they just open their mouth, they swim with this cloud of whatever little fish and shrimp they have in front of them. The water's going to pass through their gills, and their gills actually have these little bristles in them that are going to catch their food, and then they're going to swallow it. So they're what we call a filter feeder. And their mouth can open about 5 feet. Which is huge. That's like basically the height of me. So that jaw that I showed you is not the full size, but they can open their mouth about 5 feet, which is basically I could stand up in their mouth. I wouldn't want to do that. I'd give them plenty of distance just to be respectful of this animal. I wouldn't be afraid that they were going to eat me, but we want to be respectful of nature when we're visiting it out in their home. So whale sharks, they feed on plankton, things like shrimp and small fish, and they open their mouth and they filter it out of the water. Excellent. All right. We have maybe time for one more quick animal. Excellent. We'll leave you with one of our local species. So these are California sea lions. They are amazing to see out in their natural habitat, or even if you come visit us here at the aquarium, we have some California sea lions. They are a joy to watch. But let's think really quickly. What adaptations do you think they have on their body? Now, I can think of two that I'm looking at right now. One being the color, right? We talked a lot about color, and their color, I would think, would help them match the surrounding. So we talked a lot about this disruptive coloration, right? Patterns that kind of break up and make it hard to find an animal. But our California sea lions are brown, they have brown fur, and there's lots of brown kelp or other algae and sand and rocks in their habitat, and so that might help them to blend in. The other adaptation that I think of right away is similar to our fish and our turtle, are those flippers. So just like our turtle, the sea lion has flippers too, and they move them like this, just like that turtle did. They're very strong, lots of muscle, and that helps them to propel themselves through the water, and they are definitely fast swimmers. They can pick up bursts of speed definitely faster than that sea turtle, and that is going to help them to catch their food, but also to get away from predators. All right, everyone. I hope you had a great time exploring today, thinking about those adaptations. Now, I challenge you, scientists, as you're going about your day today or the rest of the week into the weekend, if you are walking around your community, your neighborhood, if you go somewhere and you see some animals, I challenge you to think about what adaptations do they have? Because I bet you can find an animal that has one, but probably more adaptations. All right, everyone. It looks like we have one more question coming in. We'll pause for that question. Miss Olivia's 4th and 5th grade class is watching. Hello, Miss Olivia. It's so nice for you to join us. Thanks for tuning in today. We love to hear from you and hope you're all having a great rest of your day. So thank you, everyone, for joining us. We are happy to have you here, and we have many more programs coming up tomorrow, Friday. I had to remember what day it was. Tomorrow, we have 4 programs, 9, 10, 2, and 3, and then all next week. And for the rest of the month, we'll have programs at the same time. Thanks, everyone.